I'll kick off the session today. Maybe I'll do about 10 minutes of more strategic roadmap of what we're thinking as a company. I know Brent covered a bit of the Gen AI portion up front. That talked a bit about our strategy as well. But I'll try to highlight some other elements of where we are seeing the connectivity. And I think IBP was a great setup for us because that is really what we want to get to is not even IBP. We want to get to truly IBP, right? Which is looking not just inside the enterprise, but outside in, right? So with that, I'm going to have a few slides, like I said. Let me try to recap first what we covered this morning, right? So there are like three key strategies, right? And Gen AI obviously is at the core of what we are seeing. How we are seeing Gen AI is really as an enabler, right? It is a platform enabler for us, and it's applicable to every piece of what we see as the next generation of whether it's hyper automation or whether it's knowledge management or tribal knowledge integration and so on, right? So the first use case here is more around how do we accelerate, or how would we say, what would an expert do, right? If you ask the question, what would an expert do in your organization if there was a problem, there was a service level issue, or there was a issue with a customer XYZ, what would an expert do, right? And really what Gen AI, the way we are looking at it is there is tribal knowledge, right? Within organizations, there's a lot of tribal knowledge. How do we synthesize that and convert that into maybe more of universal knowledge, right? And that is really what we are working on as part of the Gen AI project is taking the tribal knowledge, have experts replay what they would do on a system and try to capture that information. And the LLMs are really good at capturing that information, right? So we want to leverage that. And the ability to play it back is where we want to use that information, right? So that's really the first one. The second one is more around moving from what we would call automation to now hyper automation, right? What that means is, I know ABI is here and they have a touchless metric that they've been tracking, right? And that means what is the amount of touches or high forecast value ads that you're doing that may impact your forecast or impact your orders and so on. But with this approach, what we're saying is the notion of, in the short term, can you move to more of a hyper automation, right? Which means, can you go to 100% touchless? In the mid and long term, can you do more cross-functional scenario planning, right? So not just scenario planning, but now you want to look at cross-functional between your revenue growth teams, your supplier teams, your demand teams, all of them. There's always going to be interactions between them, right? So that's really what we're thinking about cross-functional scenario planning, driving that as part of the next generation of strategic transformations. And the last one, which is more around how do we integrate now sustainability and supplier visibility, supplier risk. You heard the various sessions talked about today. There's a lot of focus on supplier multi-tier, right? Which is, how do I know what my tier 2 suppliers are doing? What are the risks for that? How do I integrate that risk into my plan, right? And ESG has been one of those topics that is front and center in the sense everybody wants to do it. But the way we are approaching it is ESG is really a driver for collaboration, right? For you to understand what are my collaboration on my bill of materials or my capacity or my products, etc. I think ESG can be a great driver for that. And that's kind of how we're looking at it as part of an integrated planning solution. ESG drives collaboration, and collaboration drives multi-tier visibility, and so on, right? So those are kind of the high level, maybe the three key themes that we're looking to focus on. But everything driven by what we would call a platform, right? The platform is really an enabler for us to connect the dots, right? With that, let me just give you a high level picture on decisions, because decisions is what our bread and butter is, right? We want to focus on making decisions easier, right? And that's not just decisions for a particular piece of the puzzle, but for the entire puzzle, right? And like what Jason talked about, the pizza analogy, there's a whole thing that you need to look at. There are slices of the pizza, So if you think of different pieces of your supply chain, right? You have procurement, you have revenue management, you have supply chain management, you have contract manufacturing, you have tier manufacturing, etc. Each of them is making certain decisions, right? And those decisions cannot be made independent of each other. They influence each other, right? And they're being made at different points in time. They're being made for different horizons. So it's a very complex interaction of decisions. And what we want to enable with the platform is how do these come together, right? When you're thinking about a decision, if I have an upsell opportunity at a particular retailer, how does that decision translate into, do I have the supply to support that decision, right? Do I have the supplier's commitment to support that supply, right? So all of those are kind of interrelated, and that's kind of what we are looking at it. If you were to create a decision map for your organization, how would that look like, and what does each piece of the decision, who makes the decision, what solutions are required to make the decisions, how do they talk to each other, right? And that is really the power of what we are talking about, the EKG, which is our enterprise knowledge graph, to connect the dots, right? So this, in a way, the way we are translating this is there are a number of building blocks for us to enable these decisions, right? And you've seen this in the past, but our core solutions, right? We are talking about maybe 3 core solutions: IBP, supply, demand, and data, right? Those would be the core solutions. And the way we've organized them is that, like what Cheryl was talking about, right? If you're building a house, there is a foundation you start with, and you start layering on, right? So we have certain foundational blocks, right? That is really the core to enable basic automated planning, right? And then you can start layering on others, where as you become more advanced, as you get more data, as you get more mature, you want to start looking at the other blocks, right? So this is our kind of a standard, what we would call core planning solutions. But where we are seeing the adjacent areas, right? Because now we're talking about the disruptions happen not just within your enterprise, right? All the disruptions are outside in. If you were to think of disruptions on the revenue side, it's all of your market noise, right? Consumer behavior, market, your competitive behavior, etc. Those are happening outside of your realm of your enterprise. Same thing on the supplier side. Suppliers are tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. They're outside of your enterprise. And a lot of times our focus is just on the enterprise, and we forget what is happening outside that might influence my decisions, right? So where we are seeing the next level of adjacent areas is really these areas that we feel is going to have a big impact on your core supply planning, core planning, right? So if you look at the consumer side, think about revenue management, right? Revenue growth. And yesterday there was a great session yesterday on the growth leaders sessions, where they talked about all the pieces that are required for you to influence your revenue. So this is influencing, how do I make sure that I'm hitting the market at the right point in time, I'm pricing it right, I have the right initiatives to run, the right promotions, the right assortment. So all of the decisions that influence your commercial plan, right? So that's really our RGM, what we would call a suite of applications. And then on the other side is really the procurement and SRM, right? That's the piece that we'll try to highlight today on what we have. Then obviously there is sustainability. That's the area that's a big focus today in the market. But we're trying to integrate that with planning itself, right? And the other pieces are more horizontal, where customers like Kraft Heinz are looking for, how do I enable more analytics, more algorithms that I can build on my own, or like a Starbucks where they have their own algorithms, they want to plug it into the o9 platform, right? So those are areas where we see some of the analytics and PaaS capabilities coming in. Or if I want to build my own order management or a bill of material management system, can I do that as a layer on top of o9 itself, right? So those are the areas that we're kind of starting to see extensions beyond core. But those are high-value opportunities that are going to influence your planning, right? So today what we, maybe there's one more slide. So then these are kind of the breakup of those blocks, right? What are the key building blocks within each of them? There is obviously details on each of these. Karolina touched a bit upon the ESG and supplier visibility in the last session. RGM, I think there was a session yesterday about talking about the various blocks to enable joint business planning, revenue AOP, commercial planning, etc. Right? So there are different pieces of the puzzle there. And then obviously sustainability with all of our carbon footprints, the product footprints, corporate footprints, all of them coming together, right? So that's kind of a high-level overview. I just wanted to touch upon we are going beyond planning because we're seeing the need for unlocking that potential, right? The value is there is a lot of disruptions outside. How do we bring all of them and make sure the decisions are connected to each other, right? So as part of this, what we wanted to do was also show you the story of how some of these might come together. For example, if there's a supplier disruption, how does that translate into an automated resolution of a supplier commit, right? And that's the story that Karolina and Michael are going to walk through to show you a live view of what some of that might look like, all right? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Karolina. Yeah.
Would you? Come on. I like company.
All right.
Hello again. Today we're going to do a demo. So at 4:15 in the afternoon, it's best time to do a demo. So we're trying to make sure it's entertaining. So we're going to do our best. So I have Mike on the stage. You already heard me. You know me. But Mike, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. So I'm Michael Crowe on the pre-sales team here at o9. I work in both the CPG as well as the retail verticals. So as we mentioned, today it's going to be a light, easy view through actually a lot of the things that we've talked about, starting with what Brett started talking about in having transparency to your ESG metrics, being able to have supplier collaboration in real time, being able to drive decisions quickly and easily, and like when Umesh was talking about, being able to do that with auto resolutions. So we're going to do that quickly and easily. I know everybody wants to get out of here and go on to the fun activities, so we're going to take you through. We're going to show you some real software instead of just talking about the software. So we'll show you a little bit of that too.
All right, so we're going to talk about tomatoes. We're thinking about the grapes with the wine tasting. We settle on tomatoes because those are items that are commonly exposed to certain risks. I'll be a supplier, so I supply tomatoes to Mike. Mike makes pizza. He needs tomatoes. I get notified that there is a risk that's impacting my suppliers. And because of that, I'm working with Mike to let him know you're not going to get your tomatoes on time, and we have to collaborate on a solution to resolve it. Mike will take that input. He will do some mitigation scenarios and then do analytics afterwards to see how I perform, how other suppliers perform, all within one platform within the next couple minutes. Ready?
I'm ready.
Right. All right, so let's start the journey. When the team is ready, we are ready. Okay. So welcome back to o9. I'm Karolina. I'm a supplier. I'm in a supplier portal, and you can see different metrics in that dashboard. At the top, you see the forecast, how I commit to Mike. You can see I'm generally okay. There are some under commits that I have. And at the bottom, you see view for PO, like order book, what POs are confirmed, which are rejected, which are canceled, and also how my inventory is performing. So Mike can see everything, and I also see all that information with my dashboard. And in the middle, you see all of the risk information that I'm getting from different sources. You can see on the left-hand side, I have tomatoes. There are tomatoes there that are grown in California. You have different metrics, and you can see the ESG score is in red. There's some issue happening. And you can also see on the right, you have some notification that came through from an external source. If I open it, you can see a little bit more information. I know I can't see as much, but I'll read to you that there is a human right violation incident impacting California tomato harvesting industry, and it flagged it to me because I need tomatoes for the product I'm making for Mike. Immediately, both Mike and I got notified, hey, there's some issue. Look into this. Within the one click, I can go directly into a view where I can look at my forecast confirmation for, again, tomatoes. You can see, have my tomatoes. They're shipping to Nevada to Mike. That's my supplier name, and it's coming from California. The forecast is what Mike is asking for. That's how much I need. But I'm learning, I took it down to 0 because I'm learning there's some child labor issues that I really want to investigate before I feel comfortable shipping tomatoes to Mike. So I'm telling Mike it's not going to happen for next 2 months, and I indicate it as a labor shortage, labor regulation issues. Within a couple seconds, I can click on that. I update the numbers, and my last step before I turn it over to Mike is to publish commits. Immediately, Mike will get that information on his end, along with the alert, and he will be able to take over. As a part of this transition, just turning it over to Mike.
All right, so this is now my version of o9 that I'm coming into, and I can see I have this same alert down here in the bottom looking at this different industry issue where Karolina can't get me the tomatoes I need. So I'm making frozen pizza in case that wasn't clear. We're not going into the different styles of pizza. We'll leave that debate for later on. But we're making a frozen pizza here, and we don't have the heirloom tomatoes that we need to be able to do that. And I can see down here in the bottom left quadrant, that's where I can see that I'm getting it from Karolina. I have a critical issue that I need to dig into. And this is where o9 can help alert me to, what is the issue that we're looking at? So first off, I could come in here, and just like when Karolina sent it over in real time, I now have visibility to that the PO is delayed, how long it's delayed, and the quantity associated that's going to be delayed. Okay, great. Now that I know there's an issue, I know how big of the issue it is, but how does that impact my supply chain? So with this, I can then look at, what is my heirloom tomatoes? What is this projected to be over time? And we can see I do have some supply coming in, and then it's going over time, and then you can see it's going to go red at a weekly view for quite a while. We don't have any other, we're single sourced at this point in time. So yeah, we have an issue, and then we can see it spikes up at the end again when more come into play. Well, what is that going to mean though? So yes, I'm going to be low on inventory. That's clear. But what can we do from a constraint pegging perspective? Who's going to get shorted? And this raw material, just like most raw materials, it can go into a multitude of goods. It's not just in a single good. There could be a lot of goods that this is impacting. So this now gives me a view in o9 to be able to see, all right, here's my finished goods over here that are going to be impacted. When is the day of the constraint going to be? Who is the customer that's going to be impacted by this? What type of demand is that? Is it a committed order that have already cut a PO for us? Or is this just a forecast? And obviously we would treat those a little bit differently. Committed order is a little more important than just a forecast. We have visibility to all of this, and I can see what the overall quantity with that as well. So looking at this right now, well, Houston, we got a problem because we're not able to support a lot of demand. And if, in this case, our fictional customer is R-Mart, well, they're not going to get any of their margarita pizzas. So what can we do? So in o9, and this is what Umesh was talking about, we can see that there's a lot of demand that's going to be missed, like we saw in the previous graph. Now, we can have auto-resolution scenarios as part of o9, and they could be a multitude of different things. I could look at substituting some of the tomatoes. Maybe instead of using an heirloom tomato, maybe I use a Roma tomato. Maybe that's okay, maybe it's not. Maybe I could go to an alternate supplier, and that's what we're going to look at here in a second. That would be another option. Maybe if I just throw a whole bunch of money at Karolina, she'll change her mind and decommit from somebody else and send all of her heirloom tomatoes to me. So these are all the different possibilities that o9 can evaluate. Today we're just going to evaluate the simple solution of we already have a substitute supplier put in place, and that's what o9 suggested to me. We can get our additional product. Maybe it's coming from Jared. Jared can give me all of the additional tomatoes that I want, and he can give it to me on time. So our good friends at R-Mart, they're not going to miss any of their orders coming up. So that's good. But what is the overall cost to be able to do this? Because there's a reason why we chose Karolina as our primary supplier. And there's a lot of different factors as part of this. So what I'm doing here is now I'm doing a comparison where I can see this plan down here. This is my plan if I would use Karolina, and of course there's issues with it. But then here's also my plan down beneath that if I use Jared to get my heirloom tomatoes. And you can look at the different costs, and yeah, the costs are a little bit more with Jared, but then it's not just the cost of the goods and normal gross margin. A lot of those concepts that we've talked about, things like ESG, I can also look at the comparisons to be able to see, well, what is my carbon emissions if I get it from Karolina, as well as what is my water consumption going to be from Karolina versus Jared. And I can look at my plan and be able to see, well, my emission data, it's not as good from Jared. I know it may be difficult to see, but it's not that bad. So it's in with an acceptable tolerance that we're okay with moving forward with Jared as our primary supplier for the short term. But as part of this, how do we strategically want to evaluate Karolina as well as Jared in this case? We can evaluate this similar to different scorecarding metrics across time. How do we want to think about our different suppliers, and how do I want to put these different metrics in place? So I can look at the reliability, the responsiveness, their flexibility. So what this is looking at, I'm not going to go through all of the metrics in the interest of time, but what it allows you to see is I can now look at this across many different metrics to make the decision, and this is some of the decisions that when the Resolink gentleman was up here before, to try to understand for products like this, do we want to continue to be solely sourced from Karolina? Because what I'm seeing here is, well, both of these suppliers, at the end of the day, they're not very reliable. Heirloom tomatoes may just be a tricky item. And in that case, when I'm looking at these different metrics, maybe I do want to start focusing on a dual sourcing strategy, because in this case, Karolina may run into additional issues into the future, and Jared has issues on his own. So, it's giving you the data to be able to evaluate these different things to make informed decisions at the end of the day. So, what did we do in this scenario? Again, we came in here, we had an alert, we saw it in real time, we resolved that alert in real time, and then we were able to evaluate the trade-offs associated with that, and we were able to do some analytical analysis here just to see, are we really set up with success with just Karolina, or again, do we want to diversify our portfolio as part of our pizza business here? Okay, so this was, again, a quick, easy example, kind of showing a lot of the things that we've talked about throughout the day, but we did want to show some software, because we are a software company at the end of the day. So yeah, anything you'd like to add to the...
Karolina will work on resolving her issue, so Jared doesn't steal her supply. But I think what we want to make sure is that we highlight that we bring everything in one place. So within one platform, we had supplier that could log in and communicate in real time with Mike, the buyer, using a lot of analytics. That's how we're the areas we grow. That's what Umesh was talking about. So thank you for your time.
Yeah.
And tomatoes are good.